Hello, welcome, it's Diminishing returns. Normally, this is the show where we pitch sequel ideas to films. This week, however, we'll instead be looking at 1985 video game masterpiece Super Mario Bros. In case you've somehow managed to avoid the franchise for the past 3 decades, the games typically follow the exploits of the titular Mario as he traverses various obstacles through the Mushroom Kingdom on his quest to rescue Princess Peach, who's forever being kidnapped by evil, fire-breathing mammalian turtle Bowser. Video games have a sketchy history when it comes to adapting them to film. There's no clear, easy answer, and myself, Calvin, and Alan all clearly have very different ideas as to the best way of doing it, as you'll hear shortly. This episode contains spoilers for various games within the Mario franchise, including but not limited to Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Galaxy, Super Princess Peach, and Paper Mario. Super Mario Bros., the 1993 feature film, various Super Mario Bros. Cartoons, Wreck-It Ralph, the 2016 Rio Olympics closing ceremony, and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Let's go!
So, in a bit of a change of pace, today we're going to be looking at a video game or video game series. Sol, this was your idea, so why are we doing this?
Well, there's several reasons. I thought it'd be interesting to discuss video games adapting into cinema, which I'm of the opinion that there is yet to be a good film version of a video game. I'm sure we will get there eventually. I've seen 14 films to date that are based on a video game, and the best one is the Bob Hoskins Super Mario Brothers film.
Even more than Pokemon the first movie, or
even more than Pokemon the first movie.
Wow.
Even more than
Lara Croft?
The Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider films. Even more than the Sonic the Hedgehog straight-to-video anime thing from the 90s. Even more than Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which is also shit, even though its fans are adamant that it's good. I think it comes down to a few things. One is that a game and a story are two very different things, and tropes within a video game don't necessarily translate very well to narrative and story. You might want to collect 5 MacGuffins, but if you put them all in a film, it becomes episodic and it doesn't flow properly.
Well, I think that's true in a lot of cases. Certainly for Mario, it's because Super Mario games traditionally have probably the most uncomplex plot imaginable. It's you're a plumber, you need to go and save the princess from the evil dragon, go do it, and that's it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think plays into it a lot is that more often than not, video games certainly used to be, I mean, it's not quite as much the case anymore, but certainly the big games from the 90s and the 80s, the dawn of video games onwards for a while, it used to be that you kind of just took a film you liked and then based your game on it. Resident Evil was just some people watched Night of the Living Dead and thought, well, how can we turn that into a game? Metroid, one of my favourite franchises, was just someone watched Alien and was like, again, let's make a game that's, a rip-off of Alien. There's countless examples of it. Tomb Raider is a good example of it. They obviously just wanted to kind of emulate the action-adventure films that they'd seen.
Like a female Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. I think it's difficult to then translate that back into a satisfying film because, you don't want to just remake Night of the Living Dead. You don't want to just remake Alien. You don't want to just remake something. And like I say, I'm sure it will be done eventually. I'm sure it'll happen fairly soon, actually. But
the way that computer games now are developing is they are becoming more complex and there's more of a story. And they're becoming more narrative-based, a lot of them as well. So
yeah, that's going to make it really difficult moving forward. Are you familiar with the game The Last of Us?
I mean, you could have stopped that sentence at game, and the answer would have been no.
I'm very aware of it, yes. It's the one where everyone thinks that Ellen Page is in it.
Yes. It's a phenomenal, fantastic game. And it's very, very much a push in the direction of games as a storytelling medium. People flag it up as proof that games, are just as good at storytelling as anything else. I don't think The Last of Us is the best example because the story it tells is actually like incredibly derivative. You've seen it a million times before, but it feels fresh and works because you haven't seen it in a game before. You haven't played it before. But that's a great game because it's a great game. The story is very much about, a secondary characteristic of that game for me personally. I think it's difficult. But then the other end of that is you pick something like Mario, which is, one of the most famous, prolific video game franchises ever, if not the most. And it's such a broad blank slate. There are hundreds of Mario games more often than not because they can just be like, well, what haven't we done yet? And Mario swimming, all right, and it's just the Mario characters are all having a big swim, and there's not, even the story, even the main series games, the proper Mario games, the games that count. The story is so thin. Every Mario game, the story is just Princess Peach is kidnapped, Mario has to go save her from Bowser, the end, and that's fine because that's all you need. It cuts down to the core. You get straight into playing the game. You don't get bogged down in story. There are examples where they've kind of tried to expand on that. They did Super Mario Galaxy. They tried to do a whole load of stuff with backstory for this new character, Rosalina. I know there are fans of that, but I just felt it to be a real drag.
I definitely felt the same way. I've been in my research for this. I'm not that familiar with Mario, but I kind of know the broad strokes, and I watched the film. But I was sort of reading
for those of you at home, Alan is 80 years old, so he's got a broad understanding of video games. But
I'm not a video game person really, so. But what I try and do when I'm doing pictures, I try and figure out what the themes are behind it, or the kind of defining philosophies. I want to know, rather than the superficial kind of what's going on, like what's behind it all, and then try and work from that. And there was nothing in Mario. It's just a load of shit thrown together. It's like...
Yeah, I'm very much of the opinion that video games are art, and I get very annoyed when people dismiss them. But at the same time, I'm kind of skeptical about them as a storytelling medium. I know that they can be used to tell stories, and there are examples of it being done very well, but that's not... You don't have to have any story to make a brilliant game. Tetris is one of the greatest games ever made, and there is literally no story whatsoever.
You know they're making a movie out of Tetris, right?
Yes.
But the thing is, with the way a games are structured, that it's interactive. So you can't just sit there and watch a narrative. It's a different medium, and it needs its own storytelling structure, which is different.
Exactly, and Mario, doesn't need story to be a wonderful work of art, as far as I'm concerned, because you've still got all these character designs, you've got the music, you've got the animation, you've got all these artists working to create something, just like they would a film. And I don't think the story is necessarily the most important part of that. It's a different medium, therefore it works on different rules. I think people are still experimenting. I mean, it's still an incredibly young medium. You think film is a young medium, and it's been around for just over 100 years at this point. Video games have been around for 40 years, 30 years?
And the technology moves so rapidly, more so than film, that things are becoming more complex and having to change all the time.
There was actually a Mario film made in 1986.
Oh, animation or live action?
Yeah, it was an animated film.
Oh, is this the Japanese?
It was only released in Japan.
I've seen clips of this
in
online.
Japan. It's even quite hard to come by. I've actually seen this. I tracked down a copy years ago. I imagine it's all on YouTube or something now if you're interested.
Yeah. That's where I saw it.
It's not good. but it kind of seems like the obvious way to go. You make an animated, you make it into a cartoon, aim it at kids. It doesn't have to make much sense. And even that film is like the Mario brothers are playing a video game and then they get sucked into the TV and have to like save Princess Peach from Bowser and everything. And so even then they were kind of unsure about doing a straight adaptation of the kind of crazy material. They still felt like they needed a way for the audience to like get into it.
But I will say that I'm really baffled that there hasn't been a big sort of proper feature film of Super Mario in animation as the video game series has gone along, because I know that obviously there was the Bob Hoskins one, and then there was the Saturday morning cartoons that were on during the late 80s and early 90s. But for such a recognisable figure as Mario, like you look at Pokemon, which has had movies and TV shows and all kinds of things, I'm surprised that Mario hasn't had that, despite being probably the most recognisable video game character in the world.
Well, the Bob Hoskins film really burnt Nintendo's fingers.
Oh, really?
They were not pleased. That was a big film. There were so much. I mean, that was the height of Mario as a bit of pop culture, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
The early 90s, and there was huge amounts of different people coming up with different ideas and approaches for it. Dustin Hoffman was like desperate to play Mario at one point.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
Various other actors were really like campaigning for the role. I think Dustin Hoffman might have even been attached at one point, actually. And I think the pitch was going to be basically like this big high fantasy epic, and it was going to be about this guy going off into this, crazy world. And the likes of Danny DeVito, Tom Hanks, all these people were like campaigning for the role.
Wow. And so how did we end up with Bob Hoskins?
Tom Hanks apparently really wanted it. Yeah.
Wow.
But Nintendo were worried that the star of Turner and Hooch and Joe versus the Volcano couldn't headline a blockbuster.
Wow.
Which was, I suppose, a valid concern at the time.
Is this a world where Bob Hoskins was a more bankable name than Tom Hanks?
This is a world that's had Who Framed Roger Rabbit, is what it is.
That makes sense. Okay.
I think this was seen as a very similar project because it was, it's a big, high concept idea. You're playing with these established franchises that don't mesh with reality in an ordinary way. And yeah, again, I'm just reading the trivia here on IMDb. It says that Barry Morrow wrote a draft of the screenplay that was turned down because the producers felt it was too much like his previous film, Rain Man. So
that seems weird, doesn't it?
I was going to say, if you can imagine how many bizarre iterations they went through.
Well, what I was reading was basically that Dick Clement and Ian LaFrennais, who wrote Porridge, amongst other sort of classic British comedies, they wrote a script for it.
Yeah.
No.
And that was the script that was generally everyone signed on for. The director signed on, the actor signed on.
I think that was the
really good
one
script.
that Dustin Hoffman was interested in. From
that was the one that was being toted around, and then basically the studio went, actually this is we need something much more family friendly.
That was it. They got cold feet at the last minute because apparently it was, like you say, dark and just a bit too out there, just a bit weird, in a way that supposedly really captured the spirit of things, but I think basically,
you're making a Mario film in 1993. Yeah, it's got to be a family-friendly film. That's the only way to make money out of that.
Yeah,
I think it just the problem with it seemed to be that it was all done a bit last minute, and everything kind of went wrong. They were rewriting the script on the fly, and it was such a big sort of lots of sets and stuff like that. So there was loads of money being thrown into it. No one was willing to sort of stop and pause and all that.
Yeah,
the directors that he brought on were husband and wife team who hadn't really done a lot before, and it seemed like they were a little bit out of their depth on such a huge set, and also everything was going wrong around them, and they perhaps didn't have the experience to be able to deal with that in the best way, and so there was a lot of conflict between them and the actors.
Wow.
You got Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo apparently just drank their way through it to get over it. Dennis Hopper, who's fucking mental on his best day, cannot be easy to work with. So yeah, like can't be an easy dynamic. And it just seems like one of those productions where everything went wrong. The studio was interfering, and once the atmosphere gets soured, there was no way of getting it back, really.
It did seem that it went really far away from the concept of the game, and it turned into this sort of steampunky like version of Brooklyn. And I mean, that Dennis Hopper was playing King Cooper, and he's not a dragon or a monster or anything. It's really,
well, that's
really
it. I think
odd.
that's one of the reasons it's kind of derided in a lot of ways, is that it does just depart so much from the world of the games, but in weird ways.
The concept was that 65 million years ago, a meteorite hit Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs, and then the mammals rose up. But in this alternate universe, it didn't just kill the dinosaurs, it created a parallel dimension, and they were transported into that. And so this parallel dimension has been existing for 65 million years, and dinosaurs have evolved into creatures that look exactly like humans.
Which is a great idea to an extent. It's
But that
kind
has
of
nothing to do with the Super Mario
But exactly,
game.
it's as if there was another script lying around on, they got cold feet and were like, shit, what can we do? Oh, just Control F, change all the names to Mario.
It is like, one script that's been sort of like, okay, we can make that fit this.
Yeah.
Let's put this idea into it. And there's a lot of sort of extraneous points. And obviously it never really makes sense. And there's all this stuff about evolution and de-evolution, which even in a sort of silly fantasy film doesn't really have enough basis.
I mean, I'm assuming you've both seen it then, or you have.
I watched it this morning, in fact.
No, for me it was like a childhood, because I love Super Mario. It was like the first video game I remember playing. Like really kept up with the whole series, played it constantly, and I remember finding the film it was like a discount video bin somewhere. It must have been like 95, 96, something like that. And taking it home, watching it, and just being absolutely baffled. Not quite like thinking someone's put the wrong video in the thing, because this is not this is not Super Mario. What is this? And then the only things that I could really remember from it as a kid is that, like, Dennis Hopper being completely mad, and at some point there's a monkey that he becomes obsessed with, and then I remember Theo.
What?
There's a monkey.
No.
Isn't there?
I don't remember that.
At one point, he uses a de-evolution gun and shoots someone, and they turn into like a chimp.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but that is a real.
And
that's
the only other thing that really stuck with me is Fiona Shaw in it, who is absolutely barking and gets like fried and like zapped against the wall.
Yeah, and she's got this kind of Bride of Frankenstein hair after she gets electrocuted. Yeah, there is some really weird. Do you know what it reminded me of?
Yeah.
In the way that it felt, like the way that it was set, and the sort of unrealistic set and stuff like that. The Flintstones, which was made about the same time.
Yeah.
And this kind of day glow sort of thing, and it doesn't work quite.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I do think this film gets a bit of an unfair rap.
What? I think it gets a rap that's perfectly in proportion with its quality. Yes.
I really see. The thing is, I don't think it's a good film, but I think it's a perfectly watchable, like, interesting film. Like, I was never bored when I watched it.
I have to say, I think if you put an 8-year-old in front of that film, they'll just sit there and stare at it, and then they'll walk away as the ways any other film. Because for a child, the story doesn't necessarily have to make as much sense. It's just like, some bright colours. And this film is such an assault on the senses. Yeah. It's like, it's never.
But that's
stops.
It didn't strike me like it was any worse than any mediocre kids film, basically, that kind of, there's hundreds of films like that from the 80s and I guess the 90s. And
I think it definitely falls down in the sense that you can tell it's been kind of hacked up a little bit, and there's certain bits don't go anywhere. And so it doesn't flow very well. But yeah, I know what you're getting at. It is just a sort of like hyper real, silly action film.
It's no Theodore Rex, put it that way.
Oh, so few things.
That reminds me. Dennis Hopper's character in the film, at least,
King Cooper.
he's supposed to have been evolved from a T-Rex. But you notice at some points, he he walks around with like his arms up. You know, if you were doing T-Rex arms, he kind of walks around like that, just casually. Now, which is obviously he's made part of the character. Oh, I'm evolved from a T-Rex. I'll have my arms in a kind of little T-Rex kind of thing. And I don't know if that was sort of a Dennis Hopper's choice. And they never really make anything of it, but he's definitely doing it deliberately.
Wow. What I really loved as a kid, which was a Super Mario narrative, was the Super Mario... Well, its full title was The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, which were the Saturday morning cartoons based on Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. But before them, and I'm curious to know, Saul, if you've seen any of this, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show?
Yes, I'm a big fan of the live-action sequences that bookend the cartoons.
Yes, because they would have live-action actors coming.
It was that guy who's like a professional wrestler, wasn't he?
Yes.
Who was cast as Mario, and there's a crossover episode with Inspector Gadget where Maurice LaMarche is a live-action version of Inspector Gadget, who he voiced.
Yeah. Well, they would have, because the main center of the episode would be a cartoon. But then at like the start they'd have some like guest star on from like Saved by the Bell or some other kind of American TV show, and then they'd have a bit of fun with them. I'm pretty sure at a couple of points they had like a magician who came on and would do some tricks completely.
It's amazing because it's difficult to tell if it's sincere or like meant to be ironic.
Yes.
Because it's these two old men like doing a sitcom with like canned laughter with like that doesn't match up to any of the jokes. The jokes don't work or make any sense, and it's just nonsensical. And then at the end, the lead who plays Mario does that rap over the Mario music, and like he can barely
Mario.
Yeah, and he's like struggling to breathe while he does it. It's incredible.
That's what happens to retired wrestlers, I guess. That's what you become.
But I mean, it's interesting because I don't know about you, but I wasn't even aware of the Mario Brothers movie that had been made for years. Like
the anime.
No, the Bob Hoskins film.
Oh right.
I didn't know it existed for the longest time. I used to buy all sorts of comic books and magazines as a kid, and I used to see those. They were Goombas in the film, just on like the back, but it's probably before I could even read, so I wasn't aware that it was a Mario film. I think they were doing adverts that were just like, probably John Leguizamo as Luigi and, but not recognisable as Luigi, and those Goombas that don't look anything like Goombas. And I also remember seeing the box for and adverts for Bad Taste, Peter Jackson's film with that alien on the front. And as a kid, I thought it was all the same thing. I thought it was some kind of low-budget horror thing. And then one day I was in the video store looking for something to rent, and I stumbled upon the Mario film. But I must have been like 8, 9, 10 at that point. It'd been out for a while, and I had no idea the thing existed. It was this utter sort of, oh, right, they made a film of Mario? Okay.
Well, like I say, the cartoon was much more faithful to the actual games. Like I say, the Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 was one of the cartoons that I really looked forward to. I mean, certainly the quality of animation wasn't that great. There were sort of times when they just forget to put the background in, and you just have characters against like a tabletop. They would miscolor characters so much, so one character was green became purple for like a shot. It was like really badly produced, but at the same time it was just about the most faithful bit of like narrative Mario that you could get at the time.
And honestly, hand on my heart, I think the Bob Hoskins film is better than any of those cartoons.
No.
Like
No,
there's
you're wrong.
There's far more like ironic hilarity to be had from the god awful cartoons, but as an actual like product and like example of even storytelling, I'd much rather sit down and watch that film than like some of those cartoons. They're dreadful.
But aside from that movie and those cartoons that we've talked about, I don't think there's really been any other attempt to take Mario into that kind of sphere. Is that? I mean, Saul, do you know if there's any been projects in development, or did the movie make them think, no, actually, we're not even going to touch it?
There's a lot of rumbling now that Nintendo are kind of brewing something up. As I say, the Bob Hoskins film really burnt their fingers. They were very unhappy, and I think they essentially swore off making any films of anything. That's why there's never been a Legend of Zelda movie, despite however many fans begging for it. And,
a Metroid movie.
Yeah,
perfect.
And I mean, Legend of Zelda, I don't think really lends itself to a film. I can't see it working. Metroid, on the other hand, yeah, I think you could do that justice. And there was a Metroid film in development, actually, for a long while, with John Woo attached as the director.
Yeah.
And this must have been early 2000s, because I remember the names people threw out for the lead were Sarah Michelle Gellar and Paris Hilton, which would have been the latter of which would have been horrendous.
Yes.
But that never happened for whatever reason. But yeah, the impression I get is that Nintendo are kind of open to the idea with their lesser franchises as a kind of experiment. Obviously, the Pokemon anime has produced about 20 films at this point. They put one out a year pretty much, if not two some years, when they do a kind of red version, blue version film. But
is it just a case of that Mario, it works so well as a game, and maybe it should just stay that way? Like,
I think so.
If you are trying to put a narrative onto it and a character arc and stuff, maybe it just doesn't work because it's just not built with that in mind.
I don't know. I think you can, if you've got a blank slate like that, you can build anything on it, and it's just whether it's done well or not. Like, look at Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, there was nothing to base that on.
True.
But they made a great franchise there.
So yeah, Nintendo are kind of, like I say, there are rumblings that they're working on something. They patented some sort of something that interactive, like, film thing that no one really knows what it is a while ago. Then they started to release these Pikmin shorts. I don't know if they made a series of short films based on Pikmin that were CGI animation.
What are you saying? Pikmin.
Alan Pikmin, Pikmin, is
I've never heard of that.
Is a one of Nintendo's more recent heavyweight franchises. But anyway, they made a series of short films that were, I think, released over some platforms, so you could like view them on your 3DS or via the Wii U probably, and I think you could watch one for free and then pay for like a subscription or something. And then there was talk recently, it was announced that Netflix were making a series based on The Legend of Zelda. And the internet went mad with it, but then Nintendo came along and said, no, actually they're not, even though I'm pretty sure it was like officially announced, which is very strange. But again, I can't really...
That is strange.
...see it working. Oh, and also part of the Sony hacks from, when North Korea were getting all upset.
Yeah.
One of the bits of info that they dug out was like, there were a series of emails of some Sony producer going to Nintendo in Japan and meeting with Shigeru Miyamoto, and there were like photos of them with people dressed as Mario and stuff. And it was something like secured the deal or something on the email, but that's all like they dug from it. So like I say, it does seem like they're working on something, figuring something out, but I think Mario's very precious to them, and it's their Mickey Mouse, and I think they're kind of... Wreck-It Ralph, for example, wanted Mario and Luigi to appear, and they wouldn't do it. They gave them Bowser because they were less concerned about Bowser's portrayal.
Are you guys aware of what happened at the Olympics?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
So that is the sort of level Mario is on. I mean, that is pretty impressive. When you get the Prime Minister to dress up as Mario. Yeah,
I mean, it was the fact that it was the Prime Minister dressed as Mario. It's wonderful.
Well, our own Queen was a Bond girl for the Olympics back in 2012.
So the main reason that I chose for us to do Mario and adapt the video games to film is because I thought it would be a real challenge, and I thought it would be interesting to see how we'd all approach it, because it isn't. There's no obvious way of doing it, as far as I'm concerned, that would definitely work. And with that in mind, Calvin, what have you got for us?
Well, I think that's true to an extent, but I do think that as much as I may have derided the Bob Hoskins film earlier on, I do think it gets a lot of things right conceptually in terms of these two plumbers going into a fantasy world and having to save this character against a big villain.
I mean, what I find very weird is that both the Mario films to date, both the Bob Hoskins one and the anime from the 80s, they both feel the need to take you through that threshold, to have the protagonist exist in the real world and then entering the Mushroom Kingdom.
And that's exactly what mine does as well.
I find that... Well, how come you've done that then? Because I find it interesting that they felt the need to...
Because there's no other way of justifying these Italian-American plumbers in this land inhabited by... mushrooms.
But I mean, well, why not? It makes as much sense as Lord of the Rings. It'd be like adapting Lord of the Rings, and you open with like Frodo being an architect in New York who like falls into a magic realm.
You could do that. You could.
But no, because Frodo fits in the world. He's a hobbit in a world that has hobbits.
Yeah, well,
if the Mushroom Kingdom had loads of plumbers, Italian-American plumbers in it.
They're not Italian-American. The nonsensical cartoon and Bob Hoskins film decided they were going to be American. They've got Italian accents in the games, but I don't think they're ever meant to be Italian-American. And they're from the Mushroom Kingdom. You see them as babies in Yoshi's Island, so they just have Italian accents.
I don't know if that's... I'm sure something I was reading earlier in my extensive Wikipedia research said that they were supposed to be Italian-American.
I think the Italian-American thing is kind of a bone of contention. I think it's something that... they're obviously meant to be Italian. That's because Charles Martinet went in and did an Italian accent when he was auditioning for the role, and they liked what he brought to it, and... I don't know. I think he was probably meant to be Italian before that, with his moustache and everything.
Well, in the Saturday morning cartoons, they made the distinction of Mario had quite a Brooklyn sort of accent, whereas Luigi was the one who was proper, Italiano. That was the distinction between the two of them.
That makes even less.
I was going to say that doesn't make any sense. It's like Dexter from Dexter's Lab being like Eastern European, even though his sister's like American.
True.
I guess it could be his brother who's come over from the old country.
He's come over to find a wife.
Yeah. So your decision is logistical, I suppose. It's based on making it make sense. See, this is the thing. I wouldn't have tried to make sense out of Mario, so I think that's going to be hard work. I'm interested to see what you've...
I think from a narrative perspective as well, it helps to have the characters be new to the world, so that the audience can experience it with them. Because mine is basically... the animated film that I wish I had when I was 6-7 years old that I could have watched with Mario and Luigi. So we start with them. They're working as plumbers in New York.
So it's animated?
Yes.
Okay. It's not like they're live action and then they do a Space Jam or something?
No, I didn't have that in mind. But so they're living quite shit lives. They've got a plumbing business, but it's not going very well. And I want to use these sort of earlier scenes to set up a lot of conflict between the two brothers. Possibly over a girl who Mario is on and off dating, who Luigi kind of has a thing for. He feels like he's pushed in the background, that sort of thing.
That's Princess Daisy, isn't it?
In the live-action film it is.
Oh, no. In the games, that's... Mario had a little thing with Princess Daisy, but then they kind of...
Oh, right, yes.
When they decided to establish her as a separate entity to Peach, properly, because there was a bit of confusion about that. Yes. They were kind of like, well, Mario can have Peach, so Luigi can have Daisy.
Yeah, but Mario's the ladies' man, you see, and then Luigi gets his cast-offs, because that's what good brothers do.
And good God, is Princess Daisy a cast-off? Jesus Christ.
So the two of them get called out to a derelict building, a big old building that has been bought by some millionaire who's really greedy and he wants to build some luxury condos on the place. But he's a cheapskate, so he has hired the cheapest plumbers in New York to do the plumbing. And, of course, they uncover some kind of magical pipe and fall into it, and they're now
They're very big, those pipes,
they're
aren't they?
huge. And then, of course, they're transported to the Mushroom Kingdom and meet with Princess Peach and the Toads, and start to sort of like the place. When we get the fish out of water sort of stuff here, and then Bowser attacks with his Koopa kids. And, of course, they kidnap Princess Peach, and it's up to the Mario Bros. To rescue her. And so the majority of the film is sort of like a journey that takes place over various lands, and along the way they meet Toads and Yoshis that become travelling companions. But then the emotional core of the thing is them mending the fragments of their relationship over the course of the journey. And so obviously the film would end with them saving the princess and getting back to New York, and I'd quite like to have some maybe Wizard of Oz parallels here, where there are people in the real world that mirror people in the Mushroom Kingdom. So like the girl that Mario's dating could probably, be a parallel to the princess, and the greedy rich guy who wants to build the condos could be Bowser, something like that. Anyway, so then they're back in New York, and seemingly can't get back to the Mushroom Kingdom. Is it all a dream? Oh, that sort of thing. And the film would end with the brothers at home, and then a toad would run in. Alan, do you know what Toad is?
It's a little mushroom boy.
Yes! Oh, well done! I'm impressed. And so the film would end with them at home, and a toad runs into their apartment, and he tells them that the princess has been kidnapped again by a mysterious, fast blue hedgehog, which sets up the sequel as credits roll. So there's a very...
Oh, so is the sequel going to be Mario v Sonic?
Well, maybe.
Is this like when Marvel and DC finally come together?
Yeah, it's already happened. Smash Brothers did it a few years back. Well, about a decade ago.
Well, that was my
other
sort of potential idea as a story, to have like a Nintendo All-Stars sort of thing, because I
did consider that, yeah.
Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the whole Subspace Emissary narrative, it really was quite great, and I would have loved to have seen a movie. So that's my sort of straight down the line pitch. Sol, how would you turn Super Mario into a film?
Well, I suppose I'm taking quite a different approach to you here, because I don't feel like we need to go through a threshold to get there. I kind of just... Well, I guess I do and I don't. To be perfectly honest, I feel like Mario and Luigi are so poorly defined in terms of who they are, what their character is.
I think Luigi is probably more defined than Mario.
Yeah, absolutely he is. He's got a few character traits, but it's still not great.
Shall we sort of sum up what those character traits are?
Luigi, yeah. Luigi is kind of a scaredy cat. He's kind of aware of the fact that he's in Mario's shadow to an extent.
They've certainly made a play on that in more recent games, certainly.
Yeah, he's a bit slippy when you play as him.
He can jump a little bit higher.
A bit faster. Is there anything else? He's a bit more overtly comedic, I guess. They tend to play him for laughs more than Mario.
And who is Mario? I guess he's sort of just a plucky cipher of a hero, isn't he? He's sort of any positive attribute that you can project on a hero.
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, I've kind of taken the approach of... It's a similar approach to you in this regard, I suppose, because I do have an entry character for the audience. I don't know what they're called or what they are, but basically I thought, rather than just Mario, I would take Mario Kart as the sort of franchise point to focus on. And I would treat this like something like the Lego Movie or the Muppets, the recent films that have that Walter character.
Oh, right.
And we would kind of just have all of the Mario characters in this race. And to be perfectly honest, the majority of the film would be like Wacky Races, the movie, with all of the different Mario characters. But I think in terms of making it work on a narrative level, you would have a new character who's someone who's like fairly normal person that's just like grown up in the Mushroom Kingdom. They probably have to be a kid for the sake of marketing, and they, enter a race. It's their big race, and that's kind of, maybe it's a big cross-world tournament. Maybe it's a huge race that goes on for days. Who knows? But basically, like I say, it's Wacky Races, the movie, but they're Mario characters. And in the role of villains, Dick Dastardly and Muttley. Alan, are you familiar with Wario?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
What, really?
Are you familiar with Waluigi?
In as much as they're like the sort of evil Mario, right? An evil Luigi.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I know.
Yeah, I would have them be the villains who are, you know, desperate to like sabotage the race to win. And I want to elaborate on Waluigi's backstory, because Waluigi is my favorite character in the franchise. Waluigi is the best thing in the world. I know that you have the opposite opinion, Calvin.
I'm biting my tongue here. I'm just digging my nails into the desk.
Now, you see, Alan, Waluigi, they made Super Mario Tennis 64, and you could do doubles matches. So Mario was partnered up with Luigi, Peach was partnered up with Daisy, I think Donkey Kong was probably in there with Diddy Kong. There are all these like obvious pairings in the games. Mm-hmm. Wario didn't have anyone to hang around with, so they just out of like nowhere created Waluigi, who's just this bizarre anti-Luigi that never existed before. Wario had been just fine as this kind of evil Mario character, and a lot of fans hate that. They feel like he's the cheapest, like shittest.
Because he is.
Thing.
His name doesn't even make sense, because it's like Wario. At least the M's turned upside
Calvin,
down.
baby Daisy, pink gold peach. Come on, man, pink gold peach.
I'm not defending those. Like
Catsuit Mario.
You're naming things that I hate too. I don't know.
Well, Waluigi is not worse than those. You've got to accept he's a few tiers better than that.
Yeah.
And I think it's hilarious. I think they just like embraced it, and it's brilliant. I can't wait until they finally unveil Princess Weech. I've been every Mario Kart for like since. However, like, there's already an evil Yoshi, you know. He's called Boshi.
Isn't that what Birdo is?
No.
Oh no, Birdo's like a transgendered, like dinosaur or something, isn't she?
Yeah.
I'm not even joking about that, Alan. It is the character is actually a transgendered Yoshi.
Yeah. No, Boshi is like a bad Yoshi who's like a bit punk and has a spiky collar from, I think, Mario RPG or something. But anyway, I think Waluigi's brilliant, and I want to use this as an opportunity to explore how great he is, because we don't know anything about him, and I can only assume that like Wario like put an ad out on the internet or something like, do you hate Mario as much as I hate Mario? Because I'm pretty sure they're not meant to be related, and he just found this like, either he found someone who hates Mario and they kind of struck up a friendship over it, but you know, Waluigi's maybe a little bit like on the spectrum and he's not got very good social skills, so Wario kind of just like manipulates him into doing his bidding and dressing him up like an idiot, and you know, maybe he's a good guy at heart, and maybe that comes into play in the film, but ultimately he's just a little bumpkin being like, you know, what's the word, exploited by Wario, who should know better. But then Wario's a lonely old bald man who, you know, he kind of needs the company, and I just think the dynamic there would be brilliant. You've got your Laurel and Hardy, like, you know, your fat idiot who thinks they're smart, and your thin, even stupider one who's arguably more intelligent, and you know, it's a good archetype, and you draw on that. Even if Waluigi is the idiot from the old country, there's a million ways to do it, and they'd all be great. But like I say, I like to think that he put a Craigslist ad up, and like Waluigi was the guy who applied to be Wario's friend.
So, Alan,
yes,
how would you translate Super Mario Brothers into a movie?
Okay, so we've established that my Mario knowledge is pretty flaky at best. Not really a video game person, but I did have a SNES in the late 90s. I think I had a Mario game, I don't know.
What?
But I know the basics. That
How-
the popular culture.
I didn't even think you could buy a SNES
I was
without
going
it
to say,
coming with a
like,
Mario game.
yeah, how does
maybe
that
it did,
even... Why would you...
Well, I didn't get it new.
What games did you have?
I think I got it after the PlayStation was out, so it's not like it wasn't.
That's when I had my Mega Drive with the vastly superior Sonic the Hedgehog games. I could like feel Calvin like
Yes, you can.
like biting his lip. It's brilliant. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is better than any Mario game ever made, though. As you were, Alan.
Oh my god. When we'll have an episode about Sonic the Hedgehog, and then we'll deal with this then.
Okay.
They are actually making a Sonic film. Are you?
Oh well, there we go then.
It's they're doing the same weird threshold thing again as well. It's I think it might be some of the people who made all the god awful like Smurfs and Garfield movies, but essentially it's Sonic makes his way into the real world and he's a CGI character who has to do something, and I don't think it's going to be very good. Nope. Anyway.
Okay, so my Mario knowledge not big. My research for this was, watching the Bob Hoskins film. I read some stuff on Wikipedia about Mario, trying to get a handle on where it came from, like originally, and there's just nothing there. There's no history or storyline or whatever. So I pretty much could do what I wanted to it. So I just sort of took the piss. I've decided to try and do it like a realistic film, but incorporate some of the fantastical elements and try and translate them in a real life kind of way. We'll see how that works. Okay, so here we go. The film starts. We've got Mario and Luigi. They're driving around in their plumber's van. Seems like they're on their way to a job. They pull in at a street corner and start talking to a young urban gentleman who they refer to as Toad. That's his street name. And from the discussions, it's clear that Toad is a street drug pusher. Mario and Luigi are his suppliers. And the plumbing business is just a front for a drug dealing empire. So
the Mushroom King.
Mario obviously, yeah. Well, that's going to come into it. Mario is the head of the family. Luigi's his trusted lieutenant. And Mario's always going on about blood being thicker than water. Nothing's more important than family. All that. So we see them. They go to a bar called the Princess Lounge, where we introduce to their girlfriends Peach and Daisy, who are strippers at the bar. Now, these characters tradition.
Is this animated? Sorry.
No.
I forgot to mention mine would be animated, but
no, this is all live action. I've got some casting ideas we'll go into.
Okay.
Oh, brilliant.
Cool.
So Peach and Daisy, they're strippers, and obviously in the long tradition of female characters in this sort of film, they'll just wear skimpy clothing and have no real character development, and generally just be screeching annoyances and a complete burden.
That's pretty much a faithful adaptation of the characters, to be honest.
And at some point, I'm gonna have to get involved. This vicious guard dog called Yoshi.
Sorry, on a tangent. Have you played Super Princess Peach, Calvin?
No, I haven't.
It was kind of the Mario franchise's attempt at making a bit of a pro-feminist movement step forward, because in that game Mario is kidnapped and Princess Peach has to rescue him. So far so good. But then Princess Peach's abilities are all based on her like extreme emotions and mood swings, and basically she can get really angry or she can like cry a lot, and that like has different abilities that come from that. So it was kind of like heart's in the right place, but maybe try again in a few years.
When I was trying to get a handle on this, one of the things I was thinking of was like do a sort of role reversal like that. But then I was reading that they'd kind of done that, and when I was reading about the different games, it was just like they've done everything. Like I was going to do Mario in space, but I just assumed it had been done.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've established our characters. They're drug dealers. The plot revolves around a turf war with a new gang who go by the name of the Coopers. They're led by Bowser, and they're basically Haitians. They're trying to control the drug trafficking in the area. but they're identified like their gang thing is they all wear a shell necklace, so they all know kind of who's in the gang. That's the only shell reference there I could make work. So, okay, the plot, it doesn't have much of a structure. It's basically Mario and Luigi, they're out with their girlfriends, they get attacked by the Koopas, the girls are kidnapped, and Mario and Luigi have to go and get them back. But their journey to get them takes place over several distinct levels in which they have to defeat the enemy, and they get gradually stronger as they go along. So first, they go and grab some street dealers, and they beat them up and get information out of them to go to where the distribution base is, and so on until they get to the final boss. You know? And then that's basic plot, but I was just trying to sort of shoehorn in some of the elements from Mario. So they can get some friends, they need to get some muscle to help them, so they get this huge beast of a guy, and they call him the donkey. He's just a huge bloke. And I thought, of course, that at some point there'll be a car chase, and they're all throwing stuff at each other, just stuff they find, bananas, whatever else they use in Mario Kart, I can't remember. But, turn that into a car chase sequence, basically. Oh, how Mario's basically his thing is jumping, and he...
Yes, he was originally called Jumpman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to incorporate that. So during the film, whenever he's they're fighting people, he knocks them down and then brutally stomps on their head until they're dead. So to incorporate other elements from the game. So, for example, at one point Mario says he needs to get a power-up, and then he just snorts a line of coke.
I knew one of us was going to go down the drug route for this. I just knew it.
He takes...
Alan, why doesn't he take shrooms? Wouldn't that have been there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of came up with a couple of examples. Yeah, mushrooms one's kind of obvious. I thought one, he could take some acid, and then when he puts his pimp hat on with a feather in it, he thinks he can fly.
Well, the item that makes him invincible is a star, so you could have him do some, stardust, as it were.
Yeah, and then he just feels invincible, and because he doesn't feel pain. Yeah. Exactly, that's exactly what I was
saying. You could have a rock remix of the do 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 do.
Doesn't that happen in Crank 2 or something?
Oh God.
That seems like something that
possibly. I haven't worked out a way to get him into a raccoon suit, but I'm sure there must be a way of doing it. Anyway, that's it. Basically, in the end, they beat the boss and they save the girls, and we discreetly brush over the fact that they've obviously been brutally gang raped the whole time they've been in captivity, and then it's a happy ending.
Oh, good lord. You do always wonder what Bowser actually wants to do with the princess, don't you?
I know.
I think in a couple of the games, I'm pretty sure they sort of say, "Oh, he wants to marry her." But
I was going to say, have you played Mario Sunshine?
Oh yes, of
course.
course.
This is the game, Alan, where they experimented with giving the characters voice acting and dialogue, because most Mario games are played with silent, no dialogue.
In fact, I think the only lines of dialogue in the original game is "Thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle," and that's it.
Yeah, Whereas Mario Sunshine was just full of weird animated sequences of Princess Peach getting kidnapped, and then Bowser Jr. calling her Mama Peach, and then her being "You think I'm your mother?" and it got very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked that pitch.
I've got just as a sort of little ending thing, I threw out some casting ideas, but bear in mind, because I live in the past, my casting list is kind of appropriate if this was made in maybe the mid to late 90s. I mean, one of the actors I've picked is dead.
Can we try and guess who you've gone for? Are they Vince Vaughn types, or?
Yeah. They're not Vince Vaughn types. They're Vince Vaughn.
What, everyone?
No,
Vince Vaughn as Mario and Luigi with an awkward.
No. You see, you're not thinking cleverly enough.
Jonah Hill as Mario.
All right, I've got to figure out who Vince Vaughn's playing.
Donkey Kong.
No,
I mean, I want to say Bowser, but it doesn't really.
Oh, Alan and Quiet. Then I think you might have got it.
no. No, I'll have to tell you what
Okay.
it is. So as Mario and Luigi, respectively, Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn.
Ah.
So they're like the bickering brothers, and then
course.
obviously like Vince Vaughn is this. Yeah, Jon Favreau's more the little dumpy one.
like 90s Jon Favreau, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again with Peach and Daisy. I mean, they're too old now, but I went with Jennifer Tilly and Debbie Mazar.
Oh,
Yeah, that would work.
Tilly. Yeah.
Which would be perfect as the
Yeah.
kind of character I set up. And then I thought Michael Clark Duncan as Donkey Kong, because he's big enough guy to do it. Obviously, well, he's dead, but that's all I got. I don't know about Bowser. I didn't really have Bowser in my thing because I never got round to him.
Yeah. I mean, I would enjoy just an overt parody. I think that would be the best way to adapt it and have it kind of work. But obviously, it's not something that Nintendo would ever agree to. But any final thoughts, Calvin? What's your favorite Mario game?
This is a good question, actually. Probably Super Mario. It's either 3 or World. I can never pick between the two.
Never really clicked with World. My for me, it's a tie between Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Galaxy. One of those two, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I
But,
think
there's
the
a lot
vast
of-
majority of them are just phenomenal.
I was going to say there's a lot of. You could pick pretty much anything, and it'd be And Alan, what's your favourite one?
My favourite is Paper Mario.
What? Oh,
Which is a name I just picked randomly out of a list of Mario games. What is Paper Mario? What's it supposed to be?
They're role-playing games where he's like made out of paper, and the whole world's like flat and 2D, and he like folds up into a paper airplane and stuff.
Oh yeah, I like that one. That's my
Yeah,
favourite.
cool.
for a minute then I was going to be like, oh my god, he's had us. Like, this whole
All right, before we go, I would like some predictions of what the first actual good video game franchise turned movie will be. Do you have any ideas?
Isn't there something coming out now that is supposed to be?
There's an Assassin's Creed film on the way, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's.
That was it. Yeah, I saw a trailer for that, and that looked like if you're into that sort of thing, it was going to be the thing.
I've heard some. I don't know. I wouldn't hold out much hope. Maybe it'll pull it off.
There's never been a Grand Theft Auto film, has there? Like, I feel like that
No.
could maybe.
Yeah.
Have you seen Crank 2?
No.
'Cause that's the best.
I was going to say
That's the best video game adaptation
Yeah,
to a film.
no, it really
it's
is.
just not actually got a video game that it's based on.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
but it's very much a video game film.
There's Earthworm Jim. There was a cartoon series based on that in the 90s, and that was a great cartoon. So I guess if they ever like do a reboot CGI movie, which I wouldn't be surprised if it happens one day, then that might work. Probably won't though. Probably be crap. Maybe it'll never happen. I think it will happen eventually. I have no idea what it'll be though. It'll probably be something where the game isn't that well known, maybe, or it's kind of, or possibly something where I wouldn't be surprised if they end up making a kind of video game movie like franchise plan and put both into production at the same time or something like that as well. And I don't know, I guess they do that already with film tie-in games, and they're all shite. I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo put a Mario film into production. Oh no, you know what they're doing now? What they are kind of doing to, it seems, test the water a bit is this Pokemon movie that they've got in production.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail at a later date. But
Yes, I look forward to that podcast.
I do think if that goes well for them...
Alan, I wasn't even being sarcastic.
I know. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I know all about the Pokemons. Don't worry about
God,
that.
did you say the Pokemons?
No, I know them. Don't worry. I know.
Can you name all 150?
Yeah, Pikachu, Smeagol, Hufflepuff. I know them all.
Alan, do the poker rap.
I don't even know what that means.
You've made it to the end. Thank you, listener, but our princess is in another episode of the podcast. I guess you better come back next week. As always, please find our various social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and click like, subscribe, follow, whatever applies. Only if you want to, of course. Thank you, see you, bye!